You'll be pleased to hear that no careers were ultimately ended due to the various mistakes, botches, or just blatant attempts to challenge those making the rules above them found in this list. But a number of genuine facial expressions of unfiltered panic were still very much immortalized, and lessons were undoubtedly learned thanks to everything from dumping the face that runs the place on his head, to completely messing up a planned finish in front of the person paying your wage. Gareth here from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 exact moments wrestlers realized they were in trouble. Number 10, Dolph Ziggler thought it was over when DX stuffed him in a box. WWE Raw 2006. It's hard to imagine WWE programming without the ever-present bumping machine that is Dolph Ziggler at this point, with the former World Heavyweight Champion sitting as part of the company for nearly 20 years. But back in 2006, there was actually a moment in time when it looked as though Ziggles may have wrestled his last match as part of the sports entertainment giant. About a year on from his arrival as part of the relentless pains in the ass that were the Spirit Squad, Ziggler and the rest of his cheerleading pals were stuffed into a crate on the November 27th edition of Raw, and sent back down to OVW with a sticker saying as much. And it was right there and then that Dolph assumed that he was legitimately done with Vince McMahon's company, telling his followers, "When DX stuffed us in a box and we were taken off TV, I assumed I was fired." This was far from the end of the show-off WWE story, however, and Ziggler would ultimately pop back up on Raw in 2008, sporting those unmistakable bleach blonde locks and a cocky attitude that would set the stage for one of the longest WWE runs of the modern era. Number 9, Shinsuke Nakamura thought his career was over after this Cena botch, WWE SmackDown 2017. A fairly fresh main roster face in Shinsuke Nakamura assumed that an incident during his 2017 SmackDown bout opposite John Cena had doomed his main roster run early on. As the King of Strong Style would eventually note to gorilla position a little later on, the fact that Nak accidentally dropped Cena on his head after attempting an inverted exploder suplex led to a number of people backstage being pissed off at him. But being an absolute pro, Cena was quick to support his opponent backstage in the wake of the unfortunate botch, even going as far as to claim that it was his fault that the accident happened in the first place. Looking back on the moment itself, it's clear Nak was immediately concerned at the way Cena had awkwardly landed, glancing at the ref to see if he was able to continue. After understandably fearing the worst though, Shinsuke's words of "I'm sorry" were swiftly met with a reassuring "don't be sorry" from the megastar. Number 8, Cody Rhodes knew a $1,000 fine was heading his way, WWE Raw 2022. Along with banging the drum to bring back the Winged Eagle WWE Championship lately, the American Nightmare has seemingly made it his mission to spout as many wrestling terms as humanly possible on the sports entertainment stage. Back when Vince McMahon was still sitting in Gorilla, Cody was very much aware that he was asking to be fined every time he let loose the odd wrestling-friendly phrase. In fact, when talking about classing the title straps up for grabs in the company as belts to fans at San Diego Comic-Con, the eventual 2023 Royal Rumble winner would confess, "They can fine me $1,000 every time I say belts, I'm fine with that." So when Rhodes was spotted going back and forth with The Miz in April 2022 on Raw, the one-time AEW star was likely entirely aware that his insistence on calling the undisputed WWE Universal Championship title a belt on live TV would lead to him getting slapped with a hefty fine. That still couldn't stop him, mind. Number 7, Ethan Page was worried about his tight tits line, AEW 2021. It's not exactly uncommon for the folks over in the land of All Elite to let out the odd impactful curse word on AEW programming, and it's that additional layer of reality and attitude that often helps separate Tony Khan's company from the more polished world of sports entertainment. But that's not to say that the All Elite stars unleashing the often unfiltered streams of emotion are always 100% certain that what tumbles out of their mouths is going to go down well with either their boss or the folks higher up calling the shots. When it comes to Ethan Page's hilarious off-the-cuff line of having the tightest tits in the game back in 2021, for example, All Ego quickly found himself worrying if he was even allowed to say such a thing in front of those watching Dynamite around the world. After witnessing the sort of non-PG material sent the Men of the Year and ally Paige Van Zant's way by Chris Jericho and his inner circle during their summer feud though, Page soon realized that if Le Champion was allowed to talk about things like him beating his meat on live TV, then he was probably fine boasting about his particularly impressive chest. Just look at that thing. Number 6, CM Punk was probably well aware busting out this move would lead to heat, WWE Raw 2013. It's already been established on this list that dropping John Cena on his head in the middle of a squared circle is a surefire way to piss off a number of folks backstage. But did that stop CM Punk from pulling out a move that had been largely banned from being used on the WWE stage outside of the odd Brother of Destruction tombstone variation? Not a chance. The voice of the voiceless likely knew that he'd be in line for a bit of a telling off after unleashing a seriously rare piledriver on Super Cena during the pair's TV classic back on a 2013 edition of Raw. And both the unquestionably stunned audience reaction and Punk's own amazed expression upon realizing that he'd actually just let loose this taboo move on a WWE show told the story of precisely how much trouble was no doubt heading his way. Sure enough, as Punk himself would note in 2020 on Twitter, people backstage were mad, but he was also quick to remind fans that if you really think about it, they're big babies. And while Vince McMahon was said to have been particularly furious about the move being pulled out by Phil Brooks on the night, there's no questioning the fact that this moment only made the rivals' last battle that little more special to behold. Number 5, Summer Rae thought she was in big trouble after botching a finish. WWE Main Event 2013. A few months on from the Chip Magnet and John Cena getting some serious heat for their shenanigans, Fandango and Kofi Kingston went one-on-one on an edition of Main Event. But instead of the planned finish of Summer Rae secretly attempting to distract Kofi before Dango picked up the victory, his valet accidentally got caught in the act and the referee was forced to hand the victory to Kingston. The look on Ray's horrified face said it all. Instead of Vince losing it over the botch of an ending though, Ray recalled the boss looking up at them and declaring, "I loved it, it was great," before shaking their hands and sending an understandably freaked out Summer on her way. Number 4, Roman Reigns forgets his lines opposite John Cena, WWE Raw 2017. Trying to keep up with a face that runs the place at the top of their game is a challenge very few have been able to genuinely rise to. And instead of forcing the big dog to dig deep down and produce the sort of promo work expected of the next leader of the company back in 2017, Cena's raw digs and quips only succeeded in leaving the eventual tribal chief looking uncomfortably flustered. In particular, the seemingly never-ending spell of awkward silence that saw Reigns completely blank on his dialogue during the verbal sparring session resulted in a look on the former Shield star's face that screamed, "I wish they couldn't see me." Yet as Reigns himself would explain just last year, the experience of losing his words in such a high-pressure scenario only made him better as a performer down the road. And had he not had his ass handed to him by Hollywood John back in 2017, who knows if the head of the table would have ever been born. Number 3, John Cena didn't care about breaking the MSG curfew, WWE Live from MSG. Popping up on this list for the final time, I swear, John Cena isn't the sort of person you'd imagine getting in that much trouble with his boss throughout his 20-year run at the top of WWE. But there was actually one thing he was a little too consistent with over the course of his time selling out venues all over the world. According to referee Mike Chioda on his Monday Mailbag podcast, the 16-time world champion had a rather frustrating habit of breaking the strict Madison Square Garden curfew whenever he was going on last inside the historic venue. And as the veteran ref would explain, that willingness to break this particular rule would routinely lead to a hot reaction from Vince McMahon and a very high price being paid for the act of running long. But that still couldn't stop Cena from getting his stuff in opposite the likes of Seth Rollins inside of a steel cage back in 2015, for example. Simply put, the face that runs the place simply did not give a damn. Number 2, Braun Strowman quickly realizes what happens when you mess with a beast, WWE Royal Rumble 2018. As if it needed to be said, it's probably wise not to ruffle the feathers of a former UFC heavyweight champion. In the case of Braun Strowman at the 2018 Royal Rumble though, it likely did need to be said, and the fact it wasn't set the stage for one of the biggest I've effed up occurrences in WWE history. After smashing his knee into the side of the head of Brock Lesnar in the middle of a Universal Championship triple threat with Kane, the Beast quickly saw red himself. Tagging the monster among men with 2 frightening shoot punches, Lesnar soon violently reminded his challenger to slow the F down. And luckily for Strowman, he did precisely that, with the giant sporting a rather humbled look on his face soon after being brocked by the Beast. The pair reportedly made up afterwards, but not before Strowman had the absolute fear of God put into him by some of the heaviest hands in combat sports history. Number 1, Bryan Danielson knew his boss wouldn't be happy with one particular bump. WWE Elimination Chamber 2020. After somehow finding a way to come back from concussion-related issues that had once forced him into an early retirement, Bryan Danielson very much found himself being wrapped in cotton wool on WWE TV, and then Daniel Bryan was largely aware of just how protective Vince McMahon was towards him heading into his Elimination Chamber 2020 bout with Drew Gulak. So when D-Bry unfortunately landed on his head on the back of being horrifically German suplexed in the contest, the American Dragon likely knew he was about to be given an earful as he made his way to the back. As expected, Vince was not happy in the slightest, and Bryan would go on to confirm to Sports Illustrated that his boss did in fact get mad at him and told the star that he can't do stuff like that. Obviously, the former WWE champion was more concerned with whether McMahon thought the match was up to scratch. Of course it was, because look who was bloody involved. Vince, like the vast majority of fans watching around the world, just didn't want to see one of the greatest performers of his generation getting dropped on his head, especially with said icon's troubling concussion history. Please look after yourself, Bryan, you have family. And that's our list. Know of any other exact moments wrestlers realized they were in trouble? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you like this kind of thing, then please head on over to whatculture.com and find some more fantastic articles just like the one this video you're watching right now is based on, and I would know because guess who wrote it? I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for watching this lovely video today. Hopefully I'll see your faces very, very soon, but in the meantime, just be good to yourself. Bye bye!